Black powder 303 British. Now, the original 303 cartridge was a black powder cartridge. Now, I want to tell you right up front that I do not have the ability to make a faithful reproduction of the original black powder 303. And the reason why is because they had a pretty unique way of doing it. Now, the way they did it, if I understand correct, was they took a piece of brass that was an unformed 303 cartridge. I don't know by how much, but at the very least, I reckon it didn't have the neck on it. Then they took 70 grains of powder. I've read it was as much as 71.5, but 70 grains of powder, and they pressed it into kind of what someone might think would be like a Pyrodex pellet with a hole through the middle, and made a pellet of powder. They'd put it in their piece of brass, and then they'd run it into a sizing machine that would form it the rest of the way, put the neck on it, and form the brass all the way. So for me to do all of that would really take some doing. So I can't really do a faithful reproduction of the original black powder 303. The original 303 British cartridge had a 215 grain bullet, if I'm not mistaken, and it was a jacketed bullet. They had a few different kinds. They had a soft point, they had a hollow point, but it was a jacketed round. And according to what I was reading, they claimed they got about 1,850 feet per second with a black powder cartridge, even with a jacketed round, which is pretty good. Now, typically the way I do experiments like these with 30-30 or 30-06 is I pretty much fill up the case with whatever powder I like, and I usually use 3F, and I make sure I have a little bit of room for compression. I pour it out and weigh it, and then I just load them with whatever it weighs out to be. In this case, we used 55 grains of 2F Swiss and a 180 grain jacketed soft point, because that's the bullet that we use for this. This happens to be, speaking of this, is a short magazine Lee Enfield #1 Mark III, and it does have the star, which, if I'm not mistaken, the star meant that they stopped making it with the magazine cutoff. But don't quote me. I fully admit that my Lee Enfield knowledge is probably subpar, to say the least. Now, I typically would use 3F, and in all the other tests I've run, I've used 3F because that's what I like. But I used 2F for this one specifically because I always get comments from folks that say something like, you really should be using 2F because it's a rifle and 3F is made for pistols, which there is no rule or law for any of that.
More what you call guidelines than actual rules.
But I would like to add that in the world of muzzle loaders, where the 2F and 3F thing is a little bit more crucial, you're dealing with things that have a lot longer barrel than this does. This has a, I think, 25-inch barrel, which in terms of muzzle loaders would be considered pretty short. So I typically would use 3F, but in this case I am going to use 2 just to see how things go. So here's our black powder 303.
Hit the box.
Zeros.
Capping off.
1456.
Woo!
1456. 1536.
Yeah.
Come on, give me at least 3 numbers. 1607. Let's see if we could hit the target now, huh? Click. Was that 10 shots? Holy cow. Let me try one more. All right, one more.
That sounded good.
Well, not screaming powerful, but seems to shoot pretty good. All right, so there's black powder 303 at about, I think 40 yards or so. I'll double check, find out. Not bad for offhand. I'm gonna try and get a couple more numbers off this chronograph while the sun is out.
Okay, cap it off.
1587. 1587. 1537. 1618. 1602. Yeah, that's a little bit more consistent when the sun's shining on it.
Yeah.
Give this thing a try, Jim.
Oh.
Good, do that again.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, hit.
Hit?
Hit.
Miss.
No, you hit it.
Whoa.
That was a hit.
Last one, Ed.
Go ahead.
Got one
no,
more.
No, you turn.
I'm gonna miss it. Go ahead.
Shit.
The last one. Make it a good one. Nice. Very good.
Good shit, old man.
All right, ready? Here it goes.
Hi.
Okay.
You're coming down, though. That was a hit.
You're in line, but you're a little bit to the left.
Not too bad.
No.
I got one on there. That counts.
That counts.
Now, I'll tell you, out of all of my black powder cartridge experiments, this one shot the best. Not sure why, it just seemed to work out that way. Now, you might have noticed that I did do 2 batches of chronograph numbers because the first one with the 1456 number seemed really low. There was a cloud between me and the sun at that particular time, so I just did 2 batches. Not too much difference, mostly just that one low shot in the beginning. So the first batch was 1533 feet per second with a max spread of 151, and it made 939 foot-pounds of energy. The second batch was 1586 feet per second with a max spread of 81, which is much more acceptable, with 1005 foot-pounds of energy. Much more acceptable. As far as the power level goes, it's a lot like a loaded down 3030. Like if you were using a cast lead round with some unique powder is what it feels like. It shoots really well, and it seemed to be plenty accurate. For the folks that keep asking me about shooting paper, I hope that qualifies. It's about the best you're going to get out of me when it comes to shooting paper. But I was pretty happy with that. Offhand at whatever kind of yards that was, I forget. I'll put it in here. I think it's 45 yards, something like. Maybe it's not that far. Whatever. I was pretty happy with that. I'd take that all day long, even with a smokeless load, as far as me shooting goes. At 180 yards, it was going pretty well. It was consistently hitting high, so I kept bringing it down, and I got one on there. If I had some more ammo, I probably would have been able to get more than one hit on there, but still pretty well. Now, I've noticed with a lot of my other black powder experiments that after 4 or 5 shots, the accuracy just completely goes to hell. And that wasn't the case with this. This was consistent all the way up until the end when we were out of ammo. I've heard from people that it's the fast rate of twist gets clogged up with fouling more. I don't know what the rate of twist is or what style of rifling this is, but it seemed to do pretty well. So we'll take it just the same. Now, again, I typically would run 3F in these. I ran 2, and the velocities pretty much show that, mid 1500s. If we were using 3F, it probably would have got 100 feet per second faster, probably mid 1600s, I think would be a little bit better. But as far as the accuracy goes, that's a whole nother story. But still, not getting close to the 1880 or 1850 that the original black powder cartridge claims. And that's even with a 200 grain bullet, and we're using a 180. So still, the issue with getting that power level is I can't squeeze that much powder in here. At least, I did think about this for a while, if there was a way I could compress a pellet with a hole through it, and be able to fit it in there. But the problem is it's really wide down here, and it's only 3.11 up there. You're going to have a bunch of airspace around it, and I couldn't come up with a way that I was happy with, which is why the British people, had a case that wasn't formed. They stuck it in there and then formed it around it. Seems to be pretty good, but makes life harder for anyone trying to replicate it. So that's the way it is. So, as usual, folks, if you thought this video didn't suck, do me a favor and hit the like button and consider subscribing. And if you did think it sucked, well then, go make your own damn video.